Welcome to the shoulder section. We're going to talk about the 3 common causes of shoulder dysfunction, again, that are non-clinical, right? We're not talking tears. We're not talking a need for an MRI. We're talking about things that you can easily intervene on that will make significant differences in the way that your shoulder feels. If you are struggling from something that is incredibly painful or there has been trauma to that shoulder, please go get checked out. Please. And if you need referrals, I can happily point you in the direction of people who are incredibly qualified all over the world. All right? So, the 3 most common mobility restrictions that cause dysfunction in the shoulder are capsular space. So there's a layer of connective tissue that suctions the head of the humerus into the joint and holds it tight and provides stability through all those ranges of motion. And just like we've talked about in a lot of other videos, it's use it or lose it. If you never access the full range of motion of your shoulder, you are likely not going to have access to those ranges of motion. If you only move and live here, every time you try to go outside of here, you are going to struggle with some sort of compensation. The compensations may not cause pain right away, but ultimately they end up causing discomfort, right? You will cheat until you can't cheat anymore because your body only knows go. The other 2 are rib cage dysfunction. You're living like this, and if you've already watched the low back video, that's something that's probably causing a lot of dysfunction. And then the last one is your shoulder blade. If you can't move your shoulder blade, and your shoulder blade, you're trying to keep it back and down all the time, you are going to struggle with your shoulder. You're going to be able to move as freely as you could if you don't actively restrict your shoulder blades and then try to move. You know what? I don't think you're going to be able to see through this big fuzzy sweater. I'm going to change into something that's going to make it a little bit more obvious. We look at the way that your shoulder, rib cage, and shoulder blade work together. They all need to be able to do their individual jobs. And we use the shoulder car to assess what you actually have access to. This is, obviously this is within my own biological restrictions and tissue restrictions. This is everything that your shoulder should be able to do, right? You'll see people on the internet say, oh, that's useless, it's not necessary, just train in a full range of motion, you'll be fine. The thing is, a full range of motion for a chest press, or a push-up, or a pull-down, pull-up, whatever, is not your joint's full range of motion. Your shoulder joint has a massive amount of degrees of freedom. So flexion, which is this, extension, which is this, abduction, which is this, and adduction, which is this, right? Across your body, add, think that. AB, take away. Now, if you only train this, and this, and this, and this, you're better off than you were if you weren't doing those things. However, there is a zone, right? I can be in front of my body, I can be across my body and up. This is still flexion. It's flexion and adduction, but it's flexion. This is extension. It's extension and abduction, abduction, right? And then it's also what we call external rotation and internal rotation, right? So if you're checking your watch, that's internal rotation. If you're waving goodbye, that's probably external rotation. And so when you feel restriction on this side, like when you're going up like this, and you feel it on the top side of your shoulder, that's what we call closing angle joint restrictions, right? What happens is the tissue here and the tissue in the back of the shoulder, typically, are restricted. And so as you try to flex, what ends up happening is that the ball in the joint shifts up, and then you get pinch between top of joint and arm as it's trying to move, right? Those restrictions, when they can't happen, or when that full flexion can't happen, it's likely because that shoulder joint isn't, the capsular tissue doesn't have the space to actually move the way it should. The first 2 interventions are going to specifically focus on those things, restoring external rotation, restoring internal rotation, right? The next one is rib cage function. When we think about rib cage function, most people honestly don't think about it. They really don't. So what you want to do with assessing your own ability to move is, if you're stuck like this, rib cage out, you're thinking shoulders are back and down, and you're thinking this is great posture because you're so worried about sitting at a desk and thinking that you live like this. This is the funniest part about that, is the people who think they live like this don't actually flex their spine. Their spine, your thoracic spine, flexes and extends. When you sit forward and slouch through your lumbar spine, people then try to sit up straight and they do this. And they're kind of like, hold on, shoulders back. Like, why does my shoulder hurt? Why does my neck hurt? Why can't I breathe? People will try to intervene how they can, right? You can't put a postural correction device on basically a brassiere that pulls your shoulder blades back, because this isn't addressing the actual functionality that you're supposed to have, right? That's not what a natural shoulder blade or rib cage does. What we need to think about is restoring your rib cage's ability to inflate backwards. Not up, backwards. And definitely not belly breathing. We're not talking about belly breathing. Okay? Belly breathing, that's going to be a whole different thing. We're not going to talk about belly breathing right now, but your lungs aren't down here, they're up here. You need to work on bringing air up and back, not down. Okay, the last one is scapular dysfunction. Scapula is your shoulder blade. Whether you know that anatomy terminology or not, your scapula is so important for so many different things. And people will say, oh, my neck's tight, my traps are tight. Your traps are tight because they're trying to do things that that's not their job to do, right? You're stuck like this and you're trying to move and you can't, right? So when you're stuck like this and you're stressed out and you're tense and you're tired and you're just like this all the time, no wonder when you try to then move, it feels like you can't. You feel stuck, especially like you go to pick up a water jug or a milk jug in the fridge and it's like, oh, like you feel that top side shoulder like pinch. Ugh, awful. So your scapula does not need to be back and down all the damn time. It doesn't even need to be back and down when you're doing exercises. It just doesn't. It's supposed to move. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. I'm gonna try. But your shoulder blades should be able to go forward around your rib cage. They should be able to go up towards your ears. They should be able to go back, pinching towards each other, and they should be able to slide down your spine. And any combination of those things, when you ask your body to move, your shoulder blades should be able to do all of those things without crumping through your rib cage to do it. So your shoulder does shoulder things, your rib cage does rib cage things, and your shoulder blade does shoulder blade things, and everything works so much better. All of a sudden, all those alarm bells and dysfunction that you were feeling in that shoulder, it's gone. This is cool. I promise you it works. So the 4 interventions I'm going to show you are restoring shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, rib cage, what we're going to call retraction or sternal retraction, the idea of going backwards, and we're going to talk about scapular function, the things that are supposed to work, right? That one, it's so multiplanar, it's so convoluted. We're going to start on those things, but there's not going to be a silver bullet for scapula stuff. But when shoulder does shoulder joint things and rib cage does rib cage things, the scapula is going to come along. So part of the reason to teaching you the scapula is so that you're aware of what's happening there, and then you can start to sense change. There's also going to be workouts that you can do dumbbell only, calisthenics only, and gym that you can do around shoulder restriction. Learning to work through what we'd call your pain-free range of motion. So if you can move here to here and here to here, like this is your range of pain-free movement, and this, you can do exercises that exist all within that continuum that don't cause pain. But if here causes pain or here causes pain, you just, for the time being, don't go into those ranges of motion, you can assess them again as we try to improve things. You can explore with your shoulder CARs the ranges of motion that you start to build as a result of the interventions that we are teaching you. All right? Work around pain, not through pain. That doesn't mean stop, that just means move in a smarter way.